To his left is Michael Hollomon II. He's the commercial director for U.S. Strategic Metals. He has nearly 30 years in the global mining and metals industry. Previously, he was the head of the coal department for Gunvor Group, based out of Geneva. He was also spent most of his career at Glencore, well-known name, of course, in the global mining space, the largest commodities trading firm in the world. Obviously, we're talking about the refining, the choke point in the U.S. critical minerals supply chain at the point of refining, and I assume we're familiar with a lot of these statistics, but I'm going to rattle off a few of them for you. China accounts for more than 90% of the refining of rare earths, polysilicon, manganese, and graphite. More than 70% of, in addition to those, more than platinum group metals, lithium, cobalt, more than 50% of steel, nickel, and aluminum. The United States is very, very highly dependent on the imports from Chinese refining operations. So its net import reliance for yttrium from China is 93%, bismuth 60%, rare earths 56%, antimony 54%, arsenic 52%, and that's just a sampling. In all, the United States imports refined critical metals, almost all refined critical metals from China at some percentage or another. And then we have very recent examples of China being willing to use their dominant position in the refining space as leverage in geopolitical disputes. So we saw this first in 2010 when it banned rare earth element exports to Japan during a dispute that they were having. In 2024, they put export controls on graphite and tungsten. In this year of April, they restricted the export of 7 rare earths to the United States. They expanded that just this month and added another 5 to that list. So now they have export controls on 12 of the 17 that are relevant to the U.S. Again, that's just a very, very quick snapshot to sort of give some context to the discussion today. But I do want to get now to our panelists who can speak much more in depth from their expertise on this issue. So first, tell us about your companies that you're representing here today. Exactly what do they do in the refining space, and how is that helping the United States with this challenge that I just very quickly outlined? Yeah, thank you. The heavy rare earths are particularly important too, because that's maybe the greatest single chokehold that China has.
Certainly for applications like infrared, as well as one can get into all the how many kilograms of heavy rare earths a next generation fighter requires.
Yeah.
It's rather extraordinary.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's move to Mike. So same question for you. Tell us a little bit about your company, what you do in the refining space, and why what you do can be helpful to this dilemma we're discussing here.
Sure, Josh, and thank you for, again, organizing the event. This is important. I think we see this and hear this talked about all the time now. It's on mainstream news, it's in podcasts. Everyone is talking about this vulnerability, which, it seems like it's all new to us. I mean, for the three of us, we've probably been at this for 10 years, but for the mainstream majority of people, it's like, wait a minute, China has built up this monopoly on rare earths that we need for chips, for fighter jets, how did that happen? Well, it was a long game. China's been playing the long game. They've been looking for a strategic return, not a financial return. And America has been NIMBY, right? Get it out of my backyard. We want batteries made elsewhere. We want chips made elsewhere. We don't want any mining and processing. So I was a Glencore coal trader, old dirty coal, for 20 years. Also built a coal company with Gunvor. retired about 8 years ago, and I got a call from some friends of mine that had a property in Missouri. It's an old lead mine. It was a Superfund site because it was used for lead mining for 40 years in and around the World War I and II, right? They closed the mine in 1968, and it became a Superfund site. It was leaching lead off into local communities. So these friends of mine who have a company called Environmental Operations Incorporated cleaned up the site, got an administrative order of consent to remine, and they checked the tailings, and the geology in Missouri, in southeast Missouri, it has cobalt, nickel, and copper. So this is how we got into the business. We said, look, let's go after the cobalt, nickel, and copper. I'm a trader, commodities trader. I'm extremely bullish on those metals long term. You hear about their uses, superalloys, batteries, and AI, data centers. These are important kind of base and minor metals. But what we learned during the past 7 years as we've been building our processing plant is the most important thing, and the big mistake America made was not mine, baby, mine, drill, baby, drill. It's process, baby, process. The Chinese do not have significant quantities of any of these metals ready to hand. But what they did was they built processing, massive multi-metallic processing companies. In fact, the 5 largest companies in the world are all 8+ metals: Zhejiang Huayu Cobalt, Baotou Steel Rare Earth, China Min Metals, Jiangxi Copper, and GDR. All 5 of them produce many, many metals. Some of them mined nearby, but most of them brought from around the world, Latin America, Africa, where they dominate. They spent at least $3 trillion over the last 20 years buying mines and getting access to this metal. But that's not why they control the game. They control the game because they built processing, major hubs of multi-metallic processing. So this is what we're trying to do at US Strategic Metals. We have been very fortunate because we're a Superfund site. We are permitted to handle metallic mineral waste, which is going to be a big problem for all the many projects. You see literally a universe of new rare earth projects and things, popping up in America, all good projects, I'm sure, and exciting people with financing, good ideas. They're going to run into permitting problems. When you process any of these things, any of these metals, rare earths, cobalt, nickel, copper, whatever it is, you will have metallic mineral waste. It is very difficult to find places to put this stuff. It has already led to a disaster, a classic example, Li-Cycle. I don't know if there's any Li-Cycle people here. I feel for you. We really wanted to help you succeed, but they built a nice big black mass processing plant to take recycled lithium-ion batteries and return them to nickel, cobalt, and copper, magnesium, graphite from the batteries. Mm-hmm. Well, they ended up with all this waste, 100,000 tons of sodium sulfate, not necessarily a bad actor, but what are you going to do with it? You're not going to store it in New York. You're not getting permitted. So they looked around. Can we ship the waste somewhere? That was too expensive. Glencore, our partners, said, listen, you can bring it to Canada. That was too expensive. The company ended up, I don't think it's bankrupt now, but it has ended the Li-Cycle story because you've got to be able to store the waste. We have an 1,800-acre private land, not BLM land, private land, permitted site to handle the waste. What we're doing at US Strategic Metals is we're building a multi-metallic processing. Our own expertise is for things like zinc, nickel, cobalt, copper, kind of base metals, minor metals. But we have, in the past year and a half, started partnering with technology people. We've actually been in discussions with ReElement, which have a very interesting new technology, chromatography, which has a lot of potential. We're kind of old school. We're going to start with solvent extraction, things that we've seen at scale working for many, many years, but we're open to the cool new tech, and I think America should be open to the cool new tech. But let's don't forget, tried and true ways to do it, and we have to get back in the game. We're deeply into Africa. We're going to be bringing cobalt from the Congo. We're also working on the Chemaf deal, which is a massive copper cobalt deal, looking at rare earths, including the heavies from Uganda and scandium. There's a bunch of metals that we're looking at, and we just feel like a multi-metal recycling hub provides a lot of efficiencies. There's a reason Umicore, Korea Zinc, Kazzinc, and the big 5 Chinese are all doing 10, 12, 14 metals at single sites. It's because it works, it's more efficient, and it's a better way to do it. That's U.S. Strategic Metals.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. We could do a whole panel on the permitting and the, the regulatory environment in the United States, which is a massive impediment to implementing some of what we're going to be talking about here. And I was struck, you talk about the long-term Chinese strategy around this. It goes back to the late 80s. Deng Xiaoping first started talking about this. So that gives a sense of sort of their long-time horizons and the fact that they've been working a good one. So there's a lot we could tackle here, but I wanted to first, we've already referenced some of the challenges associated with what you do. We talked about environmental regulations and et cetera. Could you get a little bit more into that? What is, as you start your processes, as you're in the process of building these operations, what are you running into? What are the problems that are really causing you heartache and heartburn? And
I agree with Peter. Those are huge things that we are challenged by. I think one thing that I would like to say is the narrative and the will of the government. These are the two things that we struggle with because, we've got a lot of narrative out there that mining, processing, bad. I want the cheapest iPhone. These are competing narratives against us having not only energy security, which is national security, but energy dominance. We need to make sure that people understand that $10 cheaper iPhone means child labor, slave labor, and chemicals into the rivers, oceans, and air. That's what it means. If you want to have a $10 cheaper whatever it is that's made in China, that's what they do. And this is why their costs are cheaper than us. We have extremely competitive costs. We're 50% of the price, our cost of production compared to the Europeans. But it all boils down to, we have our own tailings impoundment. We don't have to take care of the waste. It still costs something. The Chinese just dump it in the water, right? We pay a fair wage. We can't compete with the Chinese paying a fair wage. Maybe our automation gets us there, but those are the two things. But power, right now, our power prices in Missouri are cheaper than Chinese power prices. So we're there, we're nearby, but we don't have a will, in my opinion, of, hey, we must get this done now. It's like when we talked to the DLA not long ago, they were saying, well, we had a strategic stockpile, but it was a law written during war. So we really kind of need a war in order to build up a strategic stockpile. We were gobsmacked by this kind of comment. It was later walked back and they're trying to build a strategic stockpile, but we don't have the stocks. Tomorrow there's a war, we're in big trouble because we don't have a strategic stockpile. So I think we need to get onto this, we need to get away from waiting until the last minute when our back's against the wall. I know that's democracy, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, all for it. But this is one place, national security, that we need to get out of the way. Forget about it. We'll do it cleaner. And this is also our fault. We can process cleaner by far because we have to. We're on a Superfund site. We have EPA, water, air, soil, every month. They're checking to make sure we're not doing anything wrong. You think that happens in the Chinese? You think those big, black smokestacks belching, waste into the air, you think that's the way they do it? It is not the way they do it. We can do it clean. It's worth the extra 5 cents. That's why we're heartened by a deal like MP, where they put a price floor for the NdPr. It's 105% higher than the spot price. Love that. We don't need that much, but still, that's a great signal that we're willing to support. And by the way, when Yu Cobalt sells $9 cobalt to cattle, which makes a battery that goes to a BYD car that is now better than a Tesla and much cheaper, like $10,000 cheaper. Huayu is not making money. They are losing money, but they are subsidized by China Inc. Cattle, the middleman of the battery process, is not making money. They're getting a widget, a super cheap widget into BYD to beat Tesla. That is called a whole of government approach. That's how they attack this. They consider us to be at war as far as this, this rare earth and critical mineral war. We are not involved in this war. We're dancing around it, talking about it. So we want to see funding. We want to see political will. Jump in, fund all of us that are in the space that have legitimate projects, and let's get them going. We will work out the details of, you know, how we pay back, how we have sustainable pricing over the long term, but we need to get involved. We're not involved right now.
Yeah, I'm going to combine the next two questions because I do want to leave time for Q&A from the audience. I know there's a lot of expertise in the audience and questions as well. So Tony, you just talked about there's a real movement on the African continent towards beneficiation, moving up the value chain, et cetera. Very understandable. How does the U.S., for each of you, how does the U.S. navigate this growing trend on the continent? Now, it looks different in different countries, and I understand that. But in general, what are the opportunities here for the U.S.? And we've actually already talked about some of these, but if you could expand a little bit. And then in conjunction with that, how can the U.S. government, which we've already talked a little bit about this, how can the U.S. government better help companies like your own, and also African governments? How can they better help companies like your own, which could really do great business in these countries? But let's discuss, you know, what needs to happen on the African government side as well to facilitate what you're doing. So again, we'll go right down the line.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Peter. The fact that you can go into Africa, help the processing, upgrade the material, they're losing so much value. This is what led to the cobalt. You know, you're talking about the the bans. So we've had an 8-month ban on a major minor metal that's used globally. 8 months ban from a 72% producer, the Congo. That is unheard of. Why did it happen? The Chinese came in, they started operating Kisanfu, one mine, and the Congo went from producing about 200,000 metric tons per year up until now. Until this year, they're going to produce 300,000 metric tons. This is a 100,000 ton increase because the Chinese want to drive everyone out of the cobalt market, and they also want to dominate the copper market. So Kisanfu is a copper mine. Cobalt's a byproduct. And what they're saying is, no, we're just doing it for the copper. We need the copper. But it was so bad that the Congolese, very rightly, super astute move, is they said, listen, we will make less this year, 2025, on cobalt with a 100% increase in production than we did when we only had 100,000 tons of production. It is such a big move that they blocked all exports. So there are ways to use export bans properly. I think this is the right one. Now they're doing quotas. But just back to the idea of processing and upgrading. We've been looking at this in Congo. We really want to deploy our novel but not complex hydrometallurgy for copper and cobalt in the Congo. We're discussing that with the Congolese. There are issues, water, power, right? So this is a great opportunity for DFC, XM to use some of our soft power, our money to help with the Congo, upgrade the power structure, upgrade roads. This is the way the Chinese did it, and we would be happy to go in there and help with processing closer to the mine site. Also a big issue with the rare earths, you have radioactives in the rare earths. That's right. You should really be doing a concentration and intermediate step in a lot of places that have rare earths because it's hard to transport radioactives, and even us permitted for metallic mineral waste, we don't have radioactive permits, and that's tough to get in the United States. So there's a real potential to add value eliminating the radioactives there in country.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for tackling the technology issue. I had a technology question, but I do want to get to Q&A, because obviously technology will be a huge part of this equation, and will continue to be into the future. And I agree about the sea change. Like, these conversations happen constantly around critical minerals. I wanted to do the refining piece specifically because I think that's a little underexplored. And again, when you think about the numbers that I rattled off at the beginning, which was only a sample of the numbers, it paints a really dire picture. So, it feels like the conversation has changed. There is more energy around this, but as far as a really holistic, systematic, long-term framework and structure and strategy, that I think is where a lot of the work needs to be done for the United States. A lot of this approach, of which I'm very supportive, is ad hoc right now. We have to do everything we possibly can. So we have to be ad hoc while we get the structure and the strategy together. But I think that's the other big hurdle is how do we put a real sustainable structure around addressing this problem, which is going to be a decades-long challenge. Like, there's no doubt. We've been talking about the time horizons associated with some of these, whether it be refining or even mining, et cetera. So I do want to get to questions, so you can just raise your hand if you've got one. I think we have a mic somewhere, but if not, just you can emit. So I saw Aubrey, and then we'll go over here, and then Bemba. You do have a mic coming here, yeah.
Thanks. The first question is on economics of corridors. Just to anyone who's really seen any interesting work on this, I've had a lot of conversations about libido in the last few weeks, and people are like, listen, it's going to take massive ag exports to make this thing economically and commercial viable for the long term. So just because there's a mine somewhere doesn't mean that all the surrounding infrastructure will be profitable. So one question there. My question for you, if we all went to Missouri today, what would we see there? And, how do you reach the scale in the, let's say, next 18 to 24 months to tackle some of these issues? Lastly, I would say that let's not forget about MCC. What we really need is large, very flexible monies to do things like infrastructure, which is what MCC did the most of. I don't believe DFC or XM with their underwriting standards are going to be able to move quickly or meaningfully to build the surrounding things in the near term.
Yeah, just on libido, all you have to do is look at the road to Durban, right? Look at that road. It's 59 days. I have it on good authority. There's conversations going on with some trading companies. It revolves around Chamath, but one of the bigs wants the 1 million tons a year libido badly. So if you have major trading companies that are desperate to get this 1 million tons a year, they have stuff to put on that libido corridor. It's going to be a fabulous railroad and corridor. It's going to be highly profitable. Right now, it may look a little bit pie in the sky, but it will be fantastic. As far as what would you see if you came to Missouri right now? So we are out of the ground. We have all of our concrete is poured for solvent extraction. We have crystallizers up. We are building our hydrogen reduction. We have a concentrator that we built in 2019 that is, we can turn it back on right now. We have enough of our tailings concentrate stored in and around that we don't need to be concentrating right now, but we have a fully fledged concentrator. We have storage with black mass ready to go as well. We have oxygen. We are 50% of the way down the not being brownfield anymore. We are a brownfield out of the ground active project. We do need money, long lead time things right now. We have an LOI with XM, $400 million. We've been sitting in Transaction Review Committee 2 since February. They haven't even decided on all 5 of the third-party people to review us, and that's a 3-month process. So we're kind of beating our heads against the wall. Now we have the new John Jovanovich is there. We think we're going to get some movement and traction, but really we're also doing a private raise, and the private capital is still sitting there saying, "Oh, cobalt price, copper price. Wait a minute,
lithium, right?"
So it's tough. Yes, we're able to have exposure to a bunch of different pricing. You're exactly right. That's one of our main pitch.
Gentleman in the green tie, I think, was first up on that. Yeah.
Hi there, my name is Quill Robinson. I'm with the House Foreign Affairs Committee Majority, and I cover DFC and minerals. So appreciate this conversation. You talked about the need for grand strategy. You talked about some of the different tools that are important. Could you get a bit more granular about Africa and what particular tools are most important, like MCC, if we're talking about EFC, is it equity, is it debt, is it political risk insurance? Can you just get a little more granular about what are the specific tools that are very important that perhaps differentiate Africa?
Just last thing, Tony and Peter are exactly right. They're trying to address this with National Energy Dominance Council, which Doug Burgum is the chairman of. There's also a person who is David Copley, who's really hurting the cats. We need the de-siloization. Here's an example. I just came back from Pakistan. September 8th, we signed a big minerals deal with Pakistan. They are basically giving us a ROFR on everything not nailed down by the Chinese and by Barrick. While we're there, we find out Barrick has a commitment from DFC. Who is Barrick? This is a giant Canadian gold company. DFC is committing 1.8 billion, somewhere around there, don't quote me exactly the number, but a huge billion, almost $2 billion number to a Canadian company that is going to be producing copper and gold in Pakistan that will probably go to China, right? That's where the metal is not required to go to America. Why are they doing it? Because they're going to use Caterpillar, they're going to use Fluor, American companies to do all the design and get their foot in. So I think it's a good use of DSC money, but of course it's a too big to fail Canadian gold and copper company. You have to also look to the up and comers. Yes, we're pre-revenue, but we've got, we have a lot of people on our team that have done this before in the world. They've got very good people. Peter's got very good people. Look outside of your Albemarle's and your, Barrick Golds. Have the U.S. government take a shot. We'll take loans to do some of this heavy lifting for the U.S. government. I think that's something we got to look at.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. On the high-level buy-in that you were articulating, Tony, this was the problem that Prosper Africa ran into. One of the problems that Prosper Africa ran into. It was supposed to be this was Trump 1, supposed to be a coordinating body for all of the other bodies that are involved in these issues. But it was just very hard when you didn't have a senior person with political pull heading that up, because then the other agencies could just ignore Prosper, which is frequently what.
Well, just on Glencore, they're always complaining that they're not making a killing. Just so you know, they're looking at potential partners for shares, maybe even selling Mutanda and KCC. They've been in discussions about this. It's difficult with the different governments there, but I think there is a real path with the Chemaf asset. I'm sure you're aware of the Chemaf asset. There is a U.S. group that is bidding for it. It's being blocked right now by the head of Gécamines, who I'm sure you know exactly who that is, who's interested in going a different way with Swiss, Moroccans. But there's a chance for Americans to come in and be a big player. I think we need to start with one asset and start going. And that play is interesting because it revitalizes Mutanda, right? They're going to take the Matoshi and the Etoile sites and have it processed at Mutanda. The hydroxide then will go to Missouri, to us. So this is a nice way to get America started, and we just need one anchor investment. And I think you'll see a lot of things change.
Eric, thanks for your patience.
Eric Silla from Strafe, a business advisory company. Question builds on comments made earlier by everyone, and I think most of us in this room have spent our careers trying to elevate Africa as a policy priority in this town. So I think to boil everything down, it's like, how important is Africa really in this particular space? Are there alternatives? Could U.S. companies go to other countries and find just as compelling opportunities? And are we at a inflection point where now we can actually make a compelling argument to non-Africanists that Africa, in fact, merits more engagement in Washington, or are we just facing kind of the similar dilemma that we've faced with, say, Prosper Africa, Power Africa? We can go, back 20 years and see just a succession of discussions that we've had about why Africa matters, why the U.S. should pay more attention, and how China is out competing us there. So.
Yeah, totally agree. It's something that we have to engage in more. It's a great opportunity for us too, because it's national security for the United States. But also, Africa does have to decide, permanent vassal state of China, or are we going to engage? Because you've got these two big competing countries. Make it worth their while you have the attention of the whole global community. We're all looking at critical minerals. Africa is rich, super abundant natural resources. You've got the Chinese already there. People are getting sick of them. The U.S. needs this. So I think it's time for Africa as well to put their best foot forward. This is kind of a comment about what's going on in DRC. We really need to have a win in DRC and not be blocked by the existing the powers that be. It needs to happen, and there's never been a better time for it. To your comment, we've had many iterations of this. This is the best one. I can't say it's a slam dunk. We can't do it. We can in our hemisphere. We could get all of the stuff we need in our hemisphere. Would take us a lot longer. Right now is a great opportunity to leverage the relationship.
So yeah, and I think I think Mike, you made this comment. It does seem that African governments more and more are interested in diversifying their partners after decades of intensive engagement with China in various industries. They look around and they understand, well, goodness, it's all Chinese companies who have built all of our infrastructure, or most of it, let's say, and whether it be ports or roads or whatever. And so there is an interest in diversifying away. So I think that makes this moment more opportune for the United States than traditionally as well, perhaps. We are at time, so sorry. That went really quick. We could have gone for a lot longer. Do apologize that we didn't get to all the questions, perhaps, but really thank you all for your attention, and thank you to our guests. That was really excellent. I personally learned a lot. I'm sure everybody else in the room did as well. So please join me in thanking